Welcome to the A Monday Moment with Dr. Mal podcast, where each week I, Dr. Mal, share life lessons and motivation to kickstart your Monday. Whether you're starting your day or winding down, join me or me and my future guest for a burst of positivity and a fresh perspective. Let's make Mondays meaningful together. Greetings and happy Monday, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Mallory D. McCoy, and welcome to this week's episode of A Monday Moment with Dr. Mal. As always, may this broadcast bring you what you need in the present moment, and may my light exude positivity and kindness. My love is extended to all who could use a little extra. Ashe, ashe, ashe. Let's seize the moment. Hi, everyone. I am so grateful this week for many of things, but there are some particular spaces of gratitude that I'd like to highlight this week in my gratitude section of my podcast. So, first, I'd like to say I'm grateful for the built-in opportunities of learning in my whole entire life. Last week, I was to debut on the Live Podcast Network, and I did, but it did not come without technical difficulty. There is a Mercury retrograde, but also there was some stuff that was going on my end, and it made me have to record the show twice. And actually, when it was ready to debut, it was not even in the correct format. And so the sound quality was not up to par. And so those of you who listened to last week, you're like, I can't hear that girl. I can't hear that woman. She was struggling. The struggle was real. Anyway, it was difficult, but it wasn't detrimental. And I didn't have to re-record it. I was able to upload it. And my show didn't actually debut last Monday. It debuted on Tuesday, but I'm still grateful for the delay because it wasn't like it didn't debut. It just was a delay. And now it's live on the Alive Podcast Network and the major podcast streaming platforms like Apple, Spotify, Google, and Amazon. And I'm also streaming the video version on YouTube. So make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm also grateful for the education system. Last week, my son started school, and although it was a struggle to jump back into routine for him, I'm so glad that he's back at school. His teacher is an absolute gem, and the public school that he attends is a safe space. And so I know that I don't take that for granted because there are some people who send their kids into a public school space and it's not always safe, but the one my son attends is. And so I'm really grateful for that. I'm also grateful for opportunity. I've been working for part-time with a couple of local nonprofits, working for one, volunteering for the other. And although I'm not getting paid as much as I would if I used my degrees to work, the network that I'm building and what I'm learning while working for them is invaluable, especially since I recently started my business to serve the community with my business partner, Aisha. And actually, that's another thing I'm grateful for. We were able to open our bank account. And so that just like made it real. And we applied for a grant, a small business grant. And so we're just full steam ahead with our business, and I'm excited. One thing that I added to the list that I hadn't thought about, but I'm really grateful for, is the ability to pick up the phone and call my grandparents. I got to talk to all three of my grandparents over the past couple of weeks, and what a blessing it is to have all three of them in my life and the ability to call them. And I certainly don't take that for granted. And so and I don't talk to them. I should talk to them more. I should make time for them more, but I'm thankful to have even just made the time for them. But let me tell you, I have to make the time because my grandpa, he's a whole 80-year-old Vietnam War veteran, and he's got some stories to tell. So if I get on the phone with him, I know it is not going to be less than an hour. In fact, our conversation, when I call down to Texas to talk to him. I was on the phone with him for like an hour and 10 minutes. So I know I have to set aside that amount of time to be able to talk to him so he can get out all the wisdom and all the stories that he needs to pass on. So this is why it's so important for us to stay connected to our elders. I learn something every time I get on the phone with them, and not only about them, but I learn about their past. And their past helps to shape where I'm at right now. And so, and affects what I do. And so I'm just very grateful for that. What's funny is my grandmother, she's on all social media platforms, and she has a phone that she likes to send text messages on. And she was sending like these GIFs like, good morning and have a great weekend and stuff like that. And she stopped. So I was able to call her and say, hey, Grandma, I'm missing these GIFs that you're sending. And she was grateful that I called her to tell her that, because now I'm sure I'm going to get bombarded. I love you, Grandma. But for me, for real, it's me saying, are you okay? And her sending text messages is letting me know she is. So I'm grateful. And lastly, I'm grateful for my village. I have a very tiny yet mighty village, and they activate when I need them. Outside of my home, I have Mama Leathers and my sister Nicole, and they just embrace my son. They love my son, and they help me to take care of him when I need it. And I'm really thankful for my sister, because she will drive from St. Louis all the way to Kansas City to watch him, and has done and will continue to do. And so I'm just grateful, and I love them for their willingness and their sacrifice to take care of my son. So let's get into it. Y'all know I love me a good definition, and I'm team facts over feelings. So let's get to the facts of it all. And if you looked at the title, it said the title of this show is Wait Your Turn. And my nerdy self was like, okay, what facts am I going to bring about Wait Your Turn? And I landed on something that I kind of perseverate on and thought at times, like, how did I learn what I learned? And so with the facts of this show, Wait Your Turn, I decided to explore how we learn to wait our turn in a social situation. And I then came up with a whole bunch of facts about learning to share. So here we go. According to child development experts, learning to share is a complex collaborative process, and it takes years to develop. Young children need a lot of support from their adult caregivers before doing it consistently. And to be able to properly share requires two main things: self other differentiation and impulse control. Self other differentiation basically means that children understand that other people are different from them by recognizing facial expressions and body language. And impulse control means that you're able to control your actions without thinking. And that's actually a type of self control. So I learned. Interesting. Just to be clear, I know and understand that everyone develops in their own way and at their own time. And so I completely despise developmental timelines. Ask me how I know. But for the sake of sticking to the research, child development experts say that children as young as 2 should be able to take turns with peers while demonstrating limited impulse control. But they are actually learning this skill a little bit earlier, because they are learning through conversation and imitation from the adults that are caregiving for them. So I think it's important to note that research regards the act of waiting your turn as a skill that is learned and practiced. And any skill that should be continually practiced is like a muscle. If you don't use it, you will lose it. So that brings me to the topic of the week, which is about waiting your turn. You actually may not remember when you first learned how to wait your turn, and you actually still may be learning how to wait your turn. But I've worked with many young children as an educator for over 16 years. I'm actively raising a very stubborn and loving but stubborn 7.5-year-old. And when I'm out in public, there are children that actually gravitate toward me. I have an energy. I have and understand and know the energy that I have. And children, actually, not just children, people gravitate to me, but especially children will gravitate to me. So I'm often the mom of my own son, but then I serve as the educator, mediator, and parent of other children while their parents are either on the phone on the bench in the park or on the phone at a table in an indoor playground. Ask me how I know that. So the skill of waiting your turn, like I said, is not exclusive to children because I know, and I know you know, that we can access one person in our life who are a few people in our life who currently struggle or have struggled with impulse control or self other differentiation. And if you are triggered by what I'm telling you, it actually might be you. And so the point is that because we live in a fast-paced world, waiting your turn for that thing you wanted to happen in your life for a while can feel like the most agonizing thing you've ever had to do. Our society is conditioned to want things immediately, whether it's success, recognition, or answers to our deepest questions. And you and I are no exception. However, the art of waiting, notice how I framed that, especially when done with grace and patience, can be one of the most powerful tools for personal growth. Learning to wait, period, is tough for anybody, but waiting your turn for something you want is even worse. In fact, when we're in that waiting period, we'll try to do things to try to manipulate to get a different outcome. And that makes it actually even worse. I think even now, like with social media, this makes the waiting your turn skill worse because we're constantly comparing ourselves to the picture that's being painted by others on social media when in fact social media cannot communicate what's happening the during before or even during and after that snapshot is put on social media. So you're literally comparing yourselves to factors and things that may just be for a second in time, which is wild. It's all a big smokescreen, and that's facts on facts. Ask me how I know. Anyway, for adults who have practiced the skill of waiting for a while, you know the importance of being patient. Me, I was not born with patience. I don't think anybody's born with patience, but I really struggle with patience. Astrologically wired to not have patience. And then God was like, okay, so you need a lesson in patience. I know you're about to have a son. Let me put all these lessons that you need in this child. Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. Pick me. Anyway, although patience is required for waiting, there's actually more to it. Waiting your turn also requires you to surrender to the process and trust that everything will unfold as it should. Surrender, trust. Let me tell you, ooh wee. I have been getting some real world experience with this one as of late, and I it's been a theme of my life. Surrender, let go. These have been themes in my life for the last couple of years, but like real heavy these past few months. I've even had a couple of very recent events happen where I've had to surrender to what's happening because I can't control what's happening, and I had to let it go because for a control freak like me, that's hard. So anyway, to surrender, I know that's not a big word for people not to comprehend, but it's a loaded word because it's multifaceted. So to simplify it, to surrender means to allow, but surrender doesn't mean giving up. Instead, it's a relinquishing control over things that we can't force or rush. It's recognizing that sometimes source, creator, universe, God, Buddha, Jesus, whatever you call this, the energy has a plan that we're not privy to. And it's our job to trust that process. When we authentically surrender, We let go of the need to push and control every outcome. This doesn't mean we stop striving for our goals and we just sit back and not do. Rather, we find peace in the journey, understanding that our time is coming. Surrender allows us to embrace the present moment fully without the anxiety of what's to come or the frustration of what hasn't even happened yet. Ooh, that energy is heavy. Raise your hand if you not only struggle with surrender, but you struggle with the how to surrender part. Oh, pick me. Ooh. I should raise two hands. Oh, wait, I'm going to raise them because both are and were me. And I add word to it because I'm a work in progress. I think we all are, but who, baby, I'm speaking for myself. Tag me in, especially in lieu of the fact that I made a conscious decision to not focus my energy on what I can't control because that produces worry, fear, anxiety, and stress. And I refuse to have it make time for that anymore. For my millennial ladies who know about the light switch, know that I have experienced the light switch flipping in me recently. And I decided to leave those four specific things in my 30s because ain't nobody got time for that. I can say that nature has actually had a lesson for me about the how of surrendering with two of Source's most beautiful creations, the sun and the moon. So check it. This summer, I visited Hillsborough Beach, Florida, and it was actually my first time there. It's right north of Fort Lauderdale, and Fort Lauderdale, it's a crowded beach. There's too many people per capita, but Hillsborough Beach, it was nice and quiet, and it was a 10 out of 10. If you're looking for a nice and quiet beach on the east coast of Florida, check out Hillsborough Beach. Anyway, I was there for my nephew's graduation, but it was a vacation too. So that morning of the lesson, the built-in life lesson I had, I got up at like 5:30 because my son had gotten up. He doesn't sleep very well when out of town. And so I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. I already had my alarm set for 6 o'clock, and my co-parent was there. And so I left my son with my co-parent and off I went to the beach. But when I got there, it was wild because it was the first time in my whole entire life that I actually felt alone. And it wasn't like it's dark and scary. And no, it's just, I was out on the beach by myself. I looked to my left, I looked to my right, and there was literally no one on the beach. I could not see one soul. At that moment, when I felt the fear, like wash, you know how like when they say like the blood drains from your brain, it literally washed over me. Fear, because I was all alone on this strip of beach at like dusk. It wasn't quite dark, but it wasn't quite light either. The sun was about to come up, but it just hadn't pierced the horizon yet. And that has never happened. Well, first, it's never happened to me to be on the beach by myself, but uh like all of those feelings also hadn't happened to me. So I was like, what am I scared of? And I had to sit with that. I had to sit with that. I had to process that because I didn't know what I was scared of. Because this beautiful moment is serene, it's cool, it's still. The calm waves are, flowing on the shore. Like it was all the beauty. And I couldn't even embrace the beauty because I was worried about something that it wasn't happening or hadn't even happened. What the heck? So I had to deal with that. But I decided to take a few deep breaths and praise my angel of protection for always being with me and the ancestors. And then I pressed on with my walk. And along this walk, I did my best to calm that voice. So as I'm walking, it's melting. It's not melting fast. It melted faster when I saw people. So I actually saw two girls standing talking on the shore. And then there was an older lady who was all the way in the water and she was treading the water for her workout. And then there was another person giving salutations to the sun, like they had their yoga mat out and the sun hadn't quite cracked the horizon, but they were still doing their salutations. It was beautiful to watch. But there was one guy who snuck up behind me. I did not even hear him, but the sand is not loud anyway. And so unless someone's talking or making noise, you can't hear anybody rolling up on you. But I was so busy focused on what was in the front of me that I didn't even, I was looking back a little bit, but I was taking in all the beauty that was in front of me. So anyway, snuck up on me. And I was taking a million pictures as I always do on every vacation. And so his lead into our conversation was, "Are you making sure the sun is going to rise?" And I had to think about what he said, and I laughed, but I hadn't even thought about it like that. No, I wasn't making sure the sun was going to rise. I was just taking pictures. Yeah, it was funny. He responded to our laugh, and we laughed together. And he actually asked me where I was staying, and I told him, I was staying 1.89 kilometers in the opposite direction because I had my handy dandy watch. And then he asked me if I was going to move to Florida at some point. And I said, well, I would love to. It's beautiful down here. And he goes verbatim. He goes, well, don't move with a husband because you'll be divorced. And so I was like, well, I laughed just like that. And then he kept running. It was like something that he says often, or he just didn't think two things about it. And it was hilarious. But the point is, I share this interchange with you, or this exchange of conversation with you, because although it may have been an odd one for everybody else listening, for me, it was a universal alignment, because I have been receiving downloads about the need for me to learn how to surrender. In fact, the day before this built-in life lesson, I was listening to a podcast where Michael Singer, the author of The Untethered Soul, Living Untethered, and The Surrender Experiment, was being interviewed. And he was speaking about surrender and how the first step to learning how to surrender is to learn how to surrender to the weather. And he used the example of, if you walk outside and it's cold, the weather is not going to change because you feel a certain way about it being cold. It's going to be cold. So you're going to have to modify what you do to match what the weather is. So basically, when you modify what you're personally doing, you're surrendering to the weather. Like, it doesn't care that you don't like being cold. Ooh, pick me, I don't like being cold. It's going to be cold. So you're going to have to go get a coat, or you're going to have to put on some pants, or you have to do something to cover yourself up, because it's not going to change. It's the same with this man asking me, are you making sure that the sun is going to rise? It's the same way with the sun and the moon, the sunrise and the sunset. We have to surrender to the sunrise and the sunset, like the sun set and sunrise surrender to each other every day. We literally have no choice but to surrender to either, and our feelings about it don't matter. It's gonna become dawn whether we like it or not. It's gonna be dark whether we like it or not. And taking a picture of it is not going to change the fact. Nothing can stop this flow. It's a natural flow. And so no matter what we think we have the power to do, it's not going to work in this instance. So I was able to take that and apply it directly to life, because it's always in this moment that I'm learning the lesson about authentically surrendering to life. The virtue of trust flows into this lesson, because the energy you're supposed to trust to surrender is actually your own. You're not supposed to trust anybody outside of you. You're supposed to trust yourself first. And to trust is to truly have faith in whatever is guiding the moment. And oftentimes it's not us. That's the reason why we have to let it go. And it doesn't matter your religion. Trust is a flow that cannot be disrupted, because just like the flow of water, or just like when you're outside and you see concrete and the concrete has cracks, the grass is still going to find a way to grow through the concrete. And the water is still, if the water flow is disrupted, it's still going to find another way to move. And you can have faith in all of that for sure. So my call to action to you this week is to let go and let it flow. What's said and thought is not always easy to put into practice. Ask me how I know. The example that I have is like, have you done a trust fall into the arms of someone else? And if I'm answering the question, I have never done a trust fall. I don't recall if I've done it one or not, but anyway, I haven't done it, but I'm I'm assuming that's what to be letting go actually feels like. Personally, this waiting space that I've been in my life has felt like I'm sitting in front of a Jumanji board, and I'm like, I can see it right now. It's thumping loudly. You know how it goes, the boom, 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 boom. When you get close to it, it's like boom, 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 boom. And my hands are suspended in the air, like reaching down to get ready to open it, but I cannot even move my hands to get there. That is how it's been feeling this whole time. Or like when I remember being pregnant, and at the end of the pregnancy, I was just like, can somebody get this baby out of me? There was so much pressure in my body. My body was begging for me to let this baby go, but I had to wait on the baby. Both of those sound very uh sound like agony, and they are. And so it's been crazy, to say the very least. But I will say that there are some practical things that I've tried myself to try to alleviate this pressure feeling that I've been feeling. One thing I've done is being a practice being present in the moment. I've tried not to put so much energy into what hasn't happened yet, the future, and then what has happened, but I can't control it, the past. So just being present in the moment, pinching myself. Here I am. I'm thankful right here. For my self-diagnosed ADHD brain, that can certainly be a challenge. So I just connect to my breath, and I get out and put my hands and feet in the dirt to regulate my nervous system. That's why I love my garden. That's why I love walking with no shoes on. I've also shifted my perspective to see this as an opportunity to reflect, learn, and rest. Because I'm changing my focus. The waiting is becoming less about what I'm lacking and more about the lessons that I'm gaining. I'm literally stripping myself of my ego. And those of you who know about ego death, that's exactly what I'm in right now. And it is agony. It's agony. It's like death, but just you have to be alive. It's torturous. But I will say the biggest game changer as of late in my life to alleviate the pressure of waiting for your turn or waiting for my turn has been me starting a practice of gratitude. And I've talked about this on previous episodes. I've even included it as a part of my podcast episodes because it once I started this process of being intentionally grateful every day, literally my life is changing. It's becoming more abundant, it's becoming more free, it's becoming more peaceful. The gratitude itself shifts the energy from scarcity to abundance, and that makes the weight feel less like a burden and more like a natural part of life. In fact, there's something that I one thing that I say every day, and whether it's out loud or in my mind, all that I want and need, I already have it. I don't I I don't want or need anything outside of what I already have. Keeping my mind state on that has been important for my evolution into where I'm glowing and growing to. Lastly, joyfully, with a joyful heart, setting clear intentions without timelines, because you can intend to do something, but you don't have control over whether it happens or not. You can be action oriented and strive to the greatness, but when it's supposed to happen, it will happen. And so you literally have to let go and let it flow. I hope that somebody heard some messages in there today, because if you did it, it was for me. Anyway, to wrap up today's episode, I will leave you with a few quotes and a list of affirmations. And so, actually, I have three quotes today. The first one's from Jim Carrey, which is crazy because sometimes, a lot of times, especially if you're a millennial kid, he's not always serious, but he hasn't been serious in movies, but in real life, he's quite serious. And so his quote, "Life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you." I've really, really, really taken that and put it and just like all that I want and need, I already have it. I literally have injected that into my life. Like when I'm saying, like, I look at a situation, I'm like, oh, it's not happening to me. It's happening for me. There's something that I don't know yet. There's something that is moving. There's this entity, there's this energy that's moving the things that don't serve me out of my way so that I can embrace what happens next. So I can transform and I can be propelled into greatness. So that's important. And then these next two quotes are not attributed to anybody. I just found them online, but I was like, oh, these go hand in hand, but they're hard to say back to back because they change point of view. And you'll see what I'm saying. Until it's my turn, I will keep clapping for others happily. And when it's finally your turn, I hope you understand why the wait was necessary. This was the first quote I found, and I was like, this is why journaling is so important. This is why being reflective is so important, because if you don't write down and reflect on the what your current state, and then you get to a point and you're like, oh, how did I get here? You can either think about it or you can write it down. I am a speaker. My throat chakra is open, so I like to record notes to myself. But just all the things that happen are building up to a time that's greater than you can even think about. You can't even conceptualize the greatness that's coming your way. And so here's some affirmations to help you along that journey. My time is coming and I'm ready to receive it. I trust the process and embrace the journey. I am patient and I know that good things take time. I'm exactly where I need to be right now. I release any anxiety about timing and focus on my progress. I celebrate the success of others, knowing mine is on the way. I am patient, persistent, and positive. I trust that everything is working out for my highest good. I am growing stronger and wiser as I wait, and my moment will come and I will be ready to shine. I think that's what's most important. The waiting is where you build the skill so that when what you want comes, you're ready for it. Because if you're not ready, if you're not grounded, then when it comes, you won't know what to do with it. Or you won't be able to integrate it into where you are. So in the space of waiting, build the skills so that you're ready at the end. Oh my God, I love that so much. That was not for you, that was for me. Because we are limitless. And maybe you need to surrender to what's happening in your life so that you can be physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and financially limitless. Limitless. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'm so full off of even what I said. Thank you for tuning in to a Monday Moment with Dr. Mal, now proudly a part of the Live Podcast Network. Whoop, whoop. You can find this show on the Live Podcast Network, on this website and the app, and you can find this podcast streaming across your favorite podcast streaming platforms. And next week, I'm so excited because I am starting to invite guests to be a part of my show. Next week's topic is what school administrators want you to know. And I don't have them lined up yet, but I hope to be talking to a few school administrators that will lend their expertise and lend their experience to this platform. So I can't wait for you to see what's going to be happening for the next couple of weeks and from here on out. Tune in next week, right here. We ready. Until then, love and peace to all of you. Have the best week.